Hello, I'm Melita from Timeless Yoga, sharing practical insights from the 8-step system that is yoga. Thanks for joining me again. Today we're going to look at the first step in the 8 steps of the system of yoga called the Yamas. These are often referred to as restraints, personal restraints, or ways to be in the world. I actually find that by living these principles, it actually creates a simpler way of being, less cleanup, if you like, a sense of expansion and peace and authenticity. The first Yama that we're looking at today is called Ahimsa, non-harming, and many of you might have heard about that. Often in its grossest form, it is referred to simply as relating to actual physical harm. So physical harm of animals, of people, of environment. And there's a whole other aspect to it as well. But from that sort of perspective, I invite you when you watch these videos or other content to consider if it's beneficial to you. And the way that I like to do that is by asking myself, is this information or the application of it bringing me closer to my true self? That part of me that can observe and witness, that is of wisdom, and that looks at my growth and development from a long-term perspective. So that's a first really great way to gauge what's helpful for you. I feel like with the first Yama, non-harming, that even if we only ever got this one Yama down pat and were able to really truly integrate it within ourselves and therefore in the actions we have in the world, I genuinely believe that that would bring a lot of joy, freedom, peace to us and to those around us. And being perfectly imperfect people that we are, we have the intention. So it's a guideline. It's something to aspire towards. It doesn't mean you're going to get it right all the time because we're human beings having this experience. So I'd like to share a few more examples or just ideas that you might like to consider. And you can formulate your view around what Ahimsa means to you and how you can apply it best in your life. So as I mentioned, it's not just our external actions, it's the intention behind them also that matters. And indeed, I think that really provides, I guess you could call it karmic residue. Ahimsa in the world and with others, it really can only ever be a reflection of what you've developed within yourself. So if we're judgmental and self-critical, then we can only ever really reach a certain level of ahimsa in our behavior or actions towards others. So it really does start from within. And that doesn't mean that you become a doormat, that you just allow people to treat you any which way. It's equally important to uphold your own well-being also. And this is where the balance can get tricky. And there's many discussions, I'm sure, that we could have from this. So when we're thinking about within, perhaps just considering what thoughts do you regularly have? What do you say to yourself? What is your self-talk like? And therefore, what new ways could you perhaps relate to self that might be more peaceful, more accommodating, more self-loving now? How can we walk gently in that space of uniqueness and our own authenticity? So being authentic is also ahimsa. So we're not harming ourselves by trying to fit into something that's not true for us, or trying to bend ourselves into a shape that really isn't our truth. Likewise, when we make so-called errors, can we practice ahimsa by celebrating our courage to have a go, to act, and instead of seeing something as a failure, to actually look at the learning that exists in all. Even in the most trying, most difficult situations, there's always something that can be learnt. There's always something for growth. There's always some way that this can contribute to you as an individual person and therefore influence the space and place around you. But of course, these are all just ideas that I'm presenting to you, and you can choose what works for you and perhaps what's not relevant right now. Ahimsa is very much based on balance as well. So balance is a real necessity for it to exist. It's that balance of give and take, whether that's energy or resources or time, etc. Ahimsa is also that balance of work or effort and rest, which we hear in the Yoga Sutras as it relates to asana, stiram sukham asanam, balance between effort and ease to create non-harm. Also the balance between listening and speaking in our interactions. Are we harming a person by our speech or even our lack of listening, a lack of attentiveness? There's a balance needed for ahimsa between determination and that proactive momentum and goal-orientated yang energy, if you like, and also the need for yin, the need for surrender, for acceptance, for faith at times. We can also explore ahimsa from the balance of things like people-pleasing versus boundaries. Where is the equilibrium? Because we want to ensure that we're practicing ahimsa for ourselves and therefore then also for others. Perhaps there's also a balance as it relates to ahimsa between truth and necessity. So these are all things for you to consider, and if any of them has struck a chord, feel free to do some journaling, to write about it, to comment. I'd love to hear how this sits for you. I sort of see ahimsa as a bit of a seesaw. You know, we're not perfect. We do the best we can with what we've got. And the point is that we're practicing the intention of ahimsa. And sometimes we'll get it spot on and sometimes we might not. But that's all part of growth and practicing. And that's why yoga is a system and it's called a practice, because it's ongoing. And as we practice and learn, importantly, we become more accepting of our growth and we don't berate ourselves if we don't get it quite right. Ahimsa can also be related to feeling safe within ourselves, because we can trust ourselves, because when we make promises to ourselves, we uphold them. And therefore, when we feel safe within ourselves, hello Maxie, come and join us. You'll probably meet Max on a few of these videos. Hello, darling. When we feel safe within ourselves, we also feel safe with others. Interesting, there's a certain violence, I know that's a strong word, around judgment and expectations of ourselves, but also of others. And you can think of ahimsa as trusting others to find their own way. So being there, being supportive with love, and at the same time letting them be free without the need to fix or control. That often has an sometimes unknown element of harming, because sometimes according to the paradigm of our world, we, in enthusiasm at times, sometimes with a good intention, we can actually inflict harm on others. So that sort of having that awareness and consciousness of how we act and how we are with others is important. And I guess that offers the opportunity of can you be uniquely you and I be uniquely myself? And can we actually respect the differences without the need to make either of us right or wrong? I feel like that's a really good sentiment for Ahimsa. And likewise, Ahimsa is more aligned to love than it is fear. Can we look at the world through eyes of compassion and walk gently on our way for ourselves and for others? And interestingly, another, actually a quote I read in a book that I really appreciated. I'd like to credit Deborah Adele for this one. I really had to stop and think about this one, and I hope you appreciate it too. She wrote, "Worry is fear that hasn't grown up yet, a misuse of our imagination." Worry is fear that hasn't grown up yet. So can we also perhaps see that worry, in a way, is also harming ourselves, but is it also harming others because we're not really trusting in their ability? These are all just questions that I'm sure you'll mull over, and I'd love to hear your feedback, your comments. Again, I'm offering something that hopefully gets you thinking about what this means for you and how you can implement it into your life. So finally, I'd like to invite you to step lightly, to honor others and self, to walk gently, and to leave only imprints of Ahimsa on your path. So I'll finish off there. Thank you, Melita from Timeless Yoga, and I look forward to sharing more of the 8 steps of yoga with you on future videos.